Well, hello, mathematicians, and welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about how to figure out what percentage a given sales tax is. That is, if you're given the base and you're given the sales tax, what percent in sales tax are you paying? And I have a problem on the screen in front of you. Jackie bought a pair of shoes. The following shows the cost of the shoes and the sales tax. And the sales tax was calculated based on the cost of the shoes. So what was the sales tax rate? Well, whenever you figured out a percentage, there is something that you need to know first. And that something is, what is the base? What is 100%? And we're told that in this line right here, that the sales tax was calculated based on the cost of the shoes. And in fact, probably most of these problems, you can assume that if you're given a cost and a sales tax that goes along with that, that in fact, that base, the cost itself is the base, right? And in percent, do you remember what the word base means? Well, it means that is what 100% is, right? That is our what we're starting with. So in this case, the cost of the shoes is 100%. And that means that $52 is our base. And $2.60 is some percentage of that, right? And that becomes important to us in order to figure out how to work these problems. Well, the final question that we're asked is this one: what is the sales tax rate? And so we need to figure out what percentage 260 is of 52. Well, we do know that $52 is 100%. And there are probably 3 or 4 different ways to do this problem. The one that's outlined in the book, I think, is, to my mind, just a little bit more complicated than it needs to be. And so I'm going to show you how I think about it, and you can decide if that works for you or if the other method is better. And we'll discuss both, actually all of them, 3 of them. So before we get into the problem, what I want to do is to kind of use our skills of estimation to make a prediction about what percentage this sales tax is. And you see the base being $52. And if you take 52 and you ask yourself, what is 10%? Well, divide that by 10, right? By moving the decimal point over, right? This is division by 10. And you'll get $5.20, okay? And this would be 10%. So 10% of the cost would be $5.20. Well, we see that what we have here is $2.60. And if this were $5 flat, half of 5 would be $2.50. But it's not $5 flat. It's $5.20. Half of that happens to be $2.60. So by my estimation, I've already come up with the fact that that $2.60 seems to me to be 5%. Okay. So they've given us easy numbers here to work with. But by estimating, I've predicted what a reasonable answer is. And my reasonable answer is 5%. Okay. That was the, answering the question, what was the sales tax rate? All right. So by mathematics, written mathematics, I should come up with the same answer, 5%. And I want to make sure that that can happen. So you're not always given these lovely numbers that are easy to figure out like this one was. Most of the time you're given things that are just a little bit hairier. And so you need to have some strategies to figure it out when you can't easily figure it out by mental math. So let's go through those right now. We said that $52 was 100%. So 1% is 52. Oops, my mistake. 52 divided by 100. Okay, so that would mean we're moving this decimal point. Let me change colors so you can see that happen. We're going to move that decimal point over 2, right? That's division by 100. And 1% is basically 52 cents. All right. At this point, I am able to divide my sales tax by 1% to see how many percentages it is, right? 1% times something gives me $2.60, right? So I'm simply going to put $2.60 here and 52 cents here, right? And then, of course, I'm going to move my decimal point over to make my life easier. And since I'm moving it over 2 decimal places, I'm going to do it on both sides. And I'm going to go ahead and put my decimal point up, right? Move them over both ways and put it up here so I know where it is, right? And now I have to figure out how many times does 52 go into 260. And I'm just going to kind of estimate this in order to do it. And I'm going to say, well, I know that there are, if 52 were 50 and 260 were 250, there are 5 5s in 25, and so I'm going to assume that there are 5 50s in 250, and I'm going to go with the number 5. I think that's reasonable. So 5 times 2 is 10. Here's my 0. And 5 times 5 is 25 plus 1 is 26, and lo and behold, I have got my answer. There are 5 1% in $2.60 when the 1% is 52 cents. So my answer is this sales tax is 5%. All right. In my mind, that's the easy way to do it. But that is not how the book shows you to do it, to find 1% and then divide your sales tax by 1% to find how many percents there are in it. And I don't know why your book doesn't teach it that way. It teaches it a different way. And so we're going to take a look at the way that's taught in the book, because maybe sometimes under some circumstances, it might be easier to figure it out that way. So let's take a look. Well, as we said, the sales tax rate, the shoes, the cost of the shoes is the base. So the cost of the shoes is 100%. And that means that $52 is 100%. And then the book asks, so how much is $1? What percent is $1? And we don't know what this is. This is what we're trying to find so that we can figure out what 260 is, right? This is like the unit method applied to figuring out sales tax. But instead of figuring out what 1% is, you're going to figure out how many percents are $1, right? In order to do that, I think that the temptation would be to put 52 over 100 like I did in the first. But remember, this tells us what 1% of $52 is, right? And because this is, 1% of $52 is 52/100ths, right? So, but we're not asked what 1% of $52 is. We want to know how many percents $1 is. All right. So instead of, let's see if I can, the eraser tool is what I wanted. We're going to go ahead and erase this because that doesn't get us what we're being asked over here. And what we want to know is how many percents is each dollar. So if we start with 100%, and we know that that's divided into 52 pieces, right? Each piece being $1. Then when we do this division, we will be able to figure out what 1% is. Okay, now it's a little difficult because this doesn't divide evenly, right? We know that there are two 50s in 100, but 52 does not go into 100 evenly twice. It's about 1.9 something. If you did the division, you'd see. So I'm just going to leave this 100 over 52 like this. All right. And I know that $1 is 100 divided by 52%. So 260 then becomes, well, what percent is that? That's what we're trying to figure out. That's this question right here. It becomes this, $2.60 times 100 over 52, right? And at this point, you could either get out your calculator or you could think to yourself, well, is there a relationship here with the numbers that I can kind of simplify beforehand? Let's go ahead and multiply across and see what happens. Well, that becomes 260 over 52. Right? And then when I do that, I wind up with 5. Okay? And by the way, this is 100 over 52%. So my percent is still left there, right? And that becomes 5%. All right, well, that's easy enough. Few ways to skin the cat, as it were. Is there another way? Well, yeah, there is another way. And that other way is to go ahead and set this up as a fraction from the very beginning. And so let's do that. And you see over here that you've got $2.60 over 52. And by multiplying the numerator and the denominator by 10, you eliminate the fractions, right? And you wind up with 26 over 520. Let me show you doing that, right? And these can simplify. So if you divide 26 by itself and you divide 520 by 26, you wind up with 1/20th. And you know that 1/20th is a friendly fraction to making some sort of a percentage, right? Because 20 times 5 becomes 100. So let's go ahead and show that as well. So we have 1/20th. We can either do 1/20th times 100%, which gives us 100 over 20, which is percent. I'm sorry. Forgot to write that, which is 5%, right? Because we know that 20 goes into 105 times. And remember, when you're doing division from a fraction, the numerator goes in the inside of the division box and the denominator goes on the outside. And when you divide, you get 5. In this case, you get 5. All right. But there's another way to do this, and that's to take 120. Let me see if I can move my page up at all. I'm going to try and see if there's a little bit of a space there below. Oops. There we go. Let's take 1/20th multiply 20 by 5 and 1 by 5, and what we wind up with is 5/100ths, which is 5%. Okay, so this is several different ways to do it that you have now been taught. You can figure out 1% like we did on the first page and divide your sales tax, right? Oops. Sorry. Divide your sales tax by 1%, which will give you the fact that it's 5% in this case. Or you can figure out how many percents a dollar is and multiply it by your sales tax down here and figure out that it's 5%. Or you can set up your fraction right here and then simplify it down. And if it's friendly to 100, if your simplified fraction is friendly to 100, then you're able to figure out either by multiplying by 100% and dividing, or by turning your fraction into a denominator of 100 and figuring out what the percentage is that way. All three ways are perfectly valid for solving these problems, and you can choose whichever one you think is best. All right, now it's time for you to work it out. This is, oops, sorry about that. This is guided practice number 3, and it's at the top of page 201. I want you to choose one of those methods to figure out what the sales tax of $4.71 is if the food cost $78.50. All right, so Dave went to lunch with his friends. The food cost $78.50, and the sales tax was $4.71. What was the sales tax rate? All right, so just remember, before you get rolling on this, that figuring out what the base is the key to figuring out what percentage of the tax are we dealing with. All right, so that's the first question, and pause the video, come back to me when you've got it done, and we will go over it. Well, if you're hearing the sound of my voice right now, I hope that that means that you actually paused the video and worked out the problem to make sure that you are able to do this on your own when it's time to do your homework. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started here. The cost of the food is 100%. All right, that's our base, $78.50. And so, let me see if I can do this without messing up my thing. $78.50 is 100%. All right, so now you see that you are being asked to figure out what percent $1 is, right? And we're going to go ahead and solve it this way first, and then we're going to use one of the other ways that I just taught you. Okay, so $1 is going to be 100% divided by $78.50. Okay, and $4.71. In order to find out how many percents that is, we're going to take 471 and we're going to multiply it by 100 over 78.50. And that's going to look something like this. Let me write it down below. 471 over, oh, I'm sorry. I did that wrong. Okay, and at this point, you are able to take 471 and divide it by, let's see if I can move this over so I can see it better. 78.50. All right. And remember, we don't like to leave those numbers there. So we're going to go ahead and move this like this. And the decimal point started there. So we're going to go ahead and add our zeros, move it over 2 places. So our new decimal point then is up here. And we are dividing 7,850 into 47,100. And when you do that, well, you know what? Let's estimate to predict. This is a very good time to use our powers of estimation to figure out what it should be. All right. So that we can have an kind of an educated guess. All right. So let's go ahead and do that. If we start with 70, whoops. If we start with 7,850 and we ask ourselves, this is 100%. What's 10%? Well, we just in that case will move our decimal point over 1 decimal place. And so 10% is $7.85. Okay. And, but we see that the sales tax was $4.71. Well, $7.85 is about 8, right? It's close to 8. Half of 8 is $4. And this tax is more than $4. So I am going to guess that $4.71 is about 6%. All right. That's just my estimation here, based on the fact that 10%, about 10% is about $8, and half of 10% would be $5. 5%, and half of $8 is $4, and this is more than we're looking at more than $4. So I'm gonna say it's probably about 6. So let's go ahead and put a 6 up here, right? And multiply it out. So we start out with 6 times 0. That gives us a 0. And 6 times 5 is 30. That's another 0. Put that 3 up there. 6 times 8 is 48. Plus 3 is 51. So there's a 1. Do you see how this is shaping up? And 6 times 7 is 42. Plus 5 is 47. Oh, look at that. Wow, it worked. So my sales tax rate is 6%. Okay? So that's one way to do it. And just to make sure that you guys understand how I got to here from here, I multiplied across 4.71 times 100, and that eliminated my decimal points. And 1, which is under the $4.71 times 7,850, and that's how I got that this fraction. Okay. Well, that's not the only way to do it. As you well know, here we go. 7,850. That's 100%. Okay. And instead of asking what $1 is, I'm going to ask, what is 1%? And that's 7,850 divided by 100, right? When I do that, I'm moving the decimal point over by 2, right? I'm sorry. And I wind up with 785 1,000ths. Okay. So that's 1%. I have 471. And I'm going to divide it by 1%. And I'm going to do that so that I can so that I can figure out how many 1% are in $4.71. All right. So that looks like this. Oops. Right. And we're going to move those decimal points over because we want to get rid of them. And we're moving it over 3 places. So we're going to move it over 3 places here. And then we put it up, right? And then we forget about it, right? Now I'm asking myself, how many times does 785 go into 4,710? And the answer, well, we already know it's 6, right? And so I can now go ahead and do this multiplication. 6 times 5 is 30. 6 times 8 is 48, plus 3 is 51. 6 times 7 is 42, plus 5 is 47. And I'm done. $4.71 is 6% of 78.50. All right, 2 ways to do it. There are actually way more complicated ways. You could go ahead and divide 100 by 78.50, and then you would have to do your calculator, use your calculator to do that, because you're going to wind up with a decimal, and then multiply that by 471. That'll give you 6% as well. And that's the reason that the decimal icon, or the rather calculator icon, is in the corner of your page, right next to the number 3, telling you need to use a calculator, because if you do it that way, it's going to be really, really, really hairy and difficult to deal with. All right. Well, I hope this helps you. You can approach it either way. And I also hope you have a very Merry Christmas and a wonderful break. See you later.